This video features an audio overview generated by Google NotebookLM, based on an article titled The Town I'll Live in Someday, Part 3, which I Quiet Beef, or Moku-Gweyuu in Japanese, originally posted on my blog. Quiet Beef on November 16, 2023. This story recounts the journey taken after boarding an express bus directly from the airport, heading straight for my wife's hometown, and finally arriving at the hotel. It covers the bus ride, my first in 16 years, where I noticed a large number of passengers from a specific ethnic group I hadn't seen there before, the enjoyment of a 7-Eleven coffee, and the eventual arrival at the hotel utterly exhausted. The sheer relief of finally reaching a bed where I could lie flat, after more than 24 hours of travel since leaving my home in New Jersey, was immense. Let's see how NotebookLM narrates the story, leading right up to the moment I fell fast asleep, like fainting in a microsecond upon arrival. A link to the article can be found in the description. Quiet Beef.
Imagine a 60-year-old man, right? He's just spent well over 20 grueling hours traveling across the globe.
Oh yeah, that's a brutal flight.
Completely. Crossing oceans, crossing date lines, all just to secure this house that's eventually going to become his final resting place.
Right.
And his mind is just spinning with these sweeping apocalyptic theories about global geopolitics and the collapse of modern society.
The insidious influence of international think tanks, all of that.
Exactly. He is totally geared up for an intellectual war. And this is the best part, he's just entirely defeated by the size of a Japanese 7-Eleven coffee cup.
It's the ultimate collision, you know, the cosmic and the mundane just crashing into each other.
Yeah, the brain is trying to process the macro, but his body is just screaming for the micro.
Right, because at that point, you're just surviving. And that is the beautifully messy reality we're unpacking in today's deep dive.
We really are. And we aren't analyzing a white paper today or some pristine sociological study, right?
No, not at all. We are wading into the murky, highly subjective waters of a very personal blog post.
Specifically, we're looking at a writer who goes by the Japanese handle Quiet Beef.
Oh, right. And we should clarify right out of the gate, based on the author's own, very strict premise data, that handle is pronounced Moku-Gweyuu.
Moku-Gweyuu. Got it. So not Mokushi.
Definitely not Mokushi. And definitely not Damage-Yu or Damage-Yu.
Okay, what about Damaryushi or Damaryushi?
Absolutely not. It is strictly Moku-Gweyuu.
Moku-Gweyuu. Well, I mean, it's a very deliberate moniker.
It really is. Yeah. So Moku-Gweyuu is a Japanese expatriate, and he's been living in the United States for 3 decades.
30 years! That's a huge chunk of time.
Right. And what makes his writing so compelling isn't just what he's writing about, but the style he uses to do it.
Oh, the style is fascinating. He actively tries to echo the tone of historical literature.
Yeah, he's specifically aiming for the flavor of Jiro Kamasaka's Genroku Otatbibogyo no Nikki.
Right. So you have this modern guy dealing with the absolute headaches of 21st century travel.
But he's chronicling it with this, slight detachment and the anachronistic gravity of an Edo period samurai keeping a diary.
It's wild. That stylistic choice just adds this brilliant layer of irony to everything that happens to him.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the specific entry we're dissecting today is part 3 of a series he titled Town We'll Live in Someday.
Which is such a poignant title, and the setup is intense, you know? Moku-Gweyuu and his wife are returning to Japan for the first time in 16 years.
16 years away.
Yeah, and their mission is to sort through his late father-in-law's house in a rural prefecture, basically to prepare it as their own final home.
But instead of a straightforward travelogue, we get this. It's basically an accidental masterpiece on the psychology of aging.
Oh, absolutely. And reverse culture shock. Plus, just the sheer biological failure of the human body under stress.
It really is a masterclass in temporal displacement. I mean, when you leave a place for 16 years, you don't just get culture shock when you go back.
Right. You experience this deep, neurological friction. So let's get right into the text, because the way this entry opens is honestly incredibly jarring.
Oh, it really comes out of nowhere.
This section is literally titled Boyaki, which translates to grumbling. Yeah. And he starts by apologizing for not updating the blog.
Right, which he casually blames on the side effects of his SSRI antidepressants.
Yeah, but before you even have a single second to process that level of vulnerability, he just launches into this ferocious, sweeping political rant.
He comes out swinging at the entire global order.
Literally the whole world. He targets what he calls psychopathic Anglo-Saxon leaders and trash-tier elites.
Right. And just to be completely clear for you listening, we're not taking sides here or endorsing these views. We're just impartially reporting what he wrote to understand his mindset.
Exactly. We are just the messengers here. But yeah, he claims Ukraine is clearly losing the war with Russia.
And then he pivots to this wild analogy, right? He compares global political leaders to gambling addicts playing pachinko.
The pachinko analogy. He says they lose at one machine, so they just move their taxpayer-funded buckets of coins to a new machine.
Specifically pointing to the Israel-Palestine conflict as the new geopolitical game, in his words.
Right. And again, impartial reporting here, but when you read an opening like that in what is ostensibly a travel diary about organizing a family home,
the instinct is to immediately engage with the politics, right? To debate whether his assignment is accurate or wildly off base.
Yeah, exactly. But if we put on our psychological hats for a minute, the actual content of his rant is kind of secondary to the function of the rant.
Yes, the function is what's fascinating.
Let me stop you there, though. Is it really functioning as something deeper?
What do you mean?
Well, my first read was just, this is the stereotypical grumpy old man yelling at cloud syndrome.
Oh, I see.
Like he's tired, he's cranky, and he's just venting on his blog. Why do we need to psychologize a guy who's just angry at the news?
That's a really fair pushback, actually. It absolutely reads like a standard internet vent session on the surface.
Right.
But you have to consider the timing and the context. He's an aging man. He frequently uses the term Arakan to describe himself.
But Akan, that means like around 60, right? Approaching the traditional Kanreki milestone.
Exactly. And he's been absent from his homeland for over a decade and a half.
16 years.
Right. And he's traveling to deal with the physical remnants of a dead relative, to establish his own place to eventually die.
Wow. Put like that, it's heavy.
The sheer existential weight of that personal reality is terrifying.
So the political anger is it's almost like a cinematic wide shot?
How so?
Well, he starts by looking at the entire burning globe before the camera aggressively zooms all the way down into a single seat on a highway bus in Japan.
It's a defense mechanism, right? Like, the world is crazy, so my own anxiety about going home is justified.
That's a great analogy. It is a classic grounding mechanism, a cognitive shield.
Think about the neurology of anxiety. When the immediate internal reality, the grief, the aging, the logistics of a transatlantic move, when all of that is too chaotic to process, the brain seeks order.
And projecting outward gives him that?
Oddly enough, yes. Projecting outward onto macroscopic global chaos provides a bizarre sense of control.
Right, because it's much easier to sit on an airplane and feel intellectually superior to trash-tier elites than it is to sit with the quiet, terrifying grief of your own diminishing stamina and the loss of a parent.
The anger gives him a temporary armor of certainty, in a moment of extreme personal vulnerability.
Okay, I see the mechanism now. He's taking all the messy, uncontrollable anxiety of his own mortality and mapping it onto something he can judge from a safe distance.
Right.
But the problem with that armor is that it really only works when you're insulated.
Yes.
And the second he lands in Japan and actually gets on the highway bus out of Haneda Airport, that macro-level shield starts to crack.
It starts to crack against the micro-level reality of his immediate surroundings. The physical environment always forces a reckoning.
Oh, absolutely. So we find Moku-Gweyuu and his wife on this bus heading to a prefecture in North Kanto.
And he makes a point of humorously noting that this specific prefecture perpetually ranks dead last in Japan's regional attractiveness rankings.
Yeah, so he's already throwing some self-deprecating shade at his future home, which is funny.
But as he's sitting there, he looks around the bus and zeroes in on some foreign men.
Right. He specifically notes their beards and chest hair, of all things.
And this visual trigger launches him right back into a localized version of his earlier rant.
He shifts from global geopolitics to Japanese domestic policy.
Exactly. He starts fiercely criticizing the internationalization of Japan and the influence of globalists.
And he drops a bunch of very specific institutional names here.
Oh, he really does.
Like he rails against the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, Japan's dominant conservative force. He goes after politicians who graduated from the Matsushita Institute, which is this famous training ground for Japanese political elites.
And he claims these leaders are basically brainwashed by Western think tanks. He specifically named CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
And consulting giants like McKinsey, right?
Yeah, he accuses them of gutting Japan's intrinsic value just to seek approval from the West. And again, we're just analyzing his perspective here.
Of course. But to a casual reader, dropping CSIS and McKinsey into a story about riding a bus might seem completely random.
It does seem random, but this actually taps into a very specific vein of conservative anxiety in Japan.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, there's a fear that traditional Japanese systems are being quietly dismantled by neoliberal, Western-aligned corporate strategies.
So what Moku-Gweyuu is experiencing is this jarring realization that the culturally insulated homeland he remembers might be eroding.
Exactly. But what I love about this section is how quickly that high-minded ideological panic gets completely derailed.
Oh, it gets derailed by the most mundane detail possible, right? The price of his bus ticket.
The 6,800 yen reality check.
Yes. He suddenly pivots from ranting about McKinsey dismantling the Japanese state to complaining that a bus ticket for 2 adults costs 6,800 yen.
He is genuinely shocked by it.
He calls the price exorbitant. But, he's self-aware enough to admit why he feels this way.
Right. He writes that his mental price anchor for Japan is entirely frozen in the year 2001.
2001. That is a textbook example of the expatriate temporal freeze.
In sociology, we actually look at how migrants or long-term expats construct their identity.
Tell me more about that.
Well, when you leave your homeland, your mental representation of that place doesn't organically age alongside you.
Because you aren't there to experience the small changes.
Exactly. Without the daily, incremental changes to adjust your baseline, the homeland becomes trapped in amber.
So for Moku-Gweyuu, the economic baseline, the social dynamics, the demographic makeup of Japan...
It was all downloaded into his brain in 2001, and then the Wi-Fi disconnected.
That's a great way to put it. And when you finally return after 16 years, you experience something far more severe than standard culture shock.
Because culture shock is about geographical displacement, right? What Moku-Gweyuu is experiencing is temporal shock.
Temporal shock. I like that.
To his 2001 brain, coming out of Japan's notorious deflationary period, 6,800 yen for a bus ride feels like absolute highway robbery.
Right. The objective reality of 2023 inflation simply cannot compute with his neurological baseline.
It's impossible for him.
How would you even explain that feeling to someone who hasn't lived abroad? It's not just like forgetting the exchange rate.
Let's build an analogy. Have you ever gone back and played a video game you haven't touched in a decade?
Oh, absolutely. Like you load up a save file from 15 years ago.
Exactly. You remember exactly how to play. You know the map. You know your character.
Right.
But imagine the developers have pushed a dozen massive updates while you were gone.
Oh, man. So suddenly the in-game currency is totally devalued.
Yes. The non-playable characters are acting on a different set of behavioral algorithms, and the layout of the starting town is completely rearranged.
You know the game, but the game no longer knows you.
Precisely.
And on top of that, just to finish the analogy, your own character's stamina bar is suddenly half the size it used to be.
That is the crucial part. The environment changed, and the physical vessel interacting with the environment degraded.
Which brings us to the raw biological reality of this bus ride, because despite all his grumbling about globalists and the exorbitant ticket price,
he undercuts his own anger.
He does. With a really stark admission of physical limitation. He writes about being deeply, profoundly grateful for this direct bus.
Because the physical toll of traveling for 20-plus hours from New Jersey as an American couple is devastating.
The contrast here is what makes the writing so human, I think.
How do you mean?
Well, his intellect is firing on all cylinders, right? Trying to analyze the sociological makeup of the passengers and the macroeconomic policy of the LDP. But physically, he's just an exhausted 60-year-old man sitting in the dark.
Chewing on a cold, leftover sausage roll he saved from his airplane meal.
Yeah, literally just trying to survive until the next stop.
The body always humbles the mind.
It always does. And the mind is about to get tested because the protective, passive cocoon of that bus ride eventually ends.
They have to get off.
Right. They arrive at their destination, which he translates literally as Stonehill City, just after 6 p.m.
And it's pitch dark.
Pitch dark. And they have to cross the threshold back into what he calls the human world.
This is where the friction of the return becomes really behavioral.
Right. So they are getting ready to get off the bus, and Moku-Gweyuu wants to just ask the driver if he should press the stop button.
Just a completely harmless question.
Harmless, right. But his wife immediately scolds him. She tells him not to do it, calling the behavior embarrassing.
And how does he interpret her reaction?
Well, he reflects on it in the blog. He realizes that living in America for 30 years has completely rewired him. He says that verbal confirmation has become a hardwired habit. You ask questions explicitly to make sure everything is clear.
This is such a brilliant micro study in high context versus low context communication.
Break that down for us.
Well, in the United States, which is a predominantly low context culture, explicitly confirming information with a bus driver is seen as proactive.
It's responsible and perfectly normal.
Exactly. You don't assume, you verify.
But Japan is the ultimate high-context culture.
Right. In a shared, quiet public space in Japan, there are established systems and implicit social contracts.
You press the button, the bus stops.
Asking an unnecessary verbal question breaks the silence. It draws unwanted attention, and it implies a lack of trust in the established system.
So the wife is recognizing that immediately.
Yes. She's perhaps tapping back into her native cultural instincts a bit faster than he is. She recognizes that his Americanized need for explicit confirmation is going to code as disruptive.
Or, as she says, embarrassing to the locals. It's a tiny cultural paper cut right as they arrive. But the real challenge waiting for them outside the bus isn't cultural, right? It's physical.
The stairs.
The stairs, they get dropped off on the shoulder of the highway. And to get up into the residential area, they have to scale this massive, pitch-dark staircase.
With white handrails that climbs up over a retaining wall.
It reads like a literal mythological threshold.
Ascending from the dark highway up into the realm of the living.
Right, and his wife is struggling. She can't carry her bags, so Moku-Gweyuu takes both of these large, heavy suitcases.
Now, earlier he was talking about how weak and exhausted he was.
Right. But suddenly, he writes that he scales this steep, dark staircase easily. He rationalizes it in the blog by saying that jet lag and fatigue must have just numbed his sensory perception of the weight.
But we have to look deeper than just a jet lag-induced numbing effect here.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is an evolutionary and psychological mechanism at play here.
Oh, come on. You're going to tell me carrying a suitcase is evolutionary psychology. Isn't it just adrenaline?
Well, it is adrenaline. But the trigger for the adrenaline is deeply psychological.
Okay, I'm listening.
Why does he suddenly have this burst of what we might call hysterical strength?
Right.
Remember the overarching premise. They are returning to establish their final home. He is acutely aware of his aging Erican body.
He's facing the daunting, morbid task of organizing a deceased patriarch's estate.
Exactly. And in this exact moment, at the threshold of the town, his wife falters.
So he has to step up.
It is a profound psychological imperative. Carrying those two heavy suitcases up that dark staircase is a defiant, almost desperate act against his own aging process.
Oh, wow.
The endocrine system responds to the psychological need to protect and provide. It's him proving to his wife, and more importantly to himself, that he is still the capable patriarch.
He is silently screaming like, I am not obsolete yet. I can still carry the load for us into this final chapter. That makes the immediate aftermath of that climb so much more heartbreaking, though.
It really does.
Because he crests the stairs, right? Completely riding that high of being the strong, capable helper.
He enters the residential street.
And he sees a local woman carrying her own suitcase, still buzzing with that benevolent energy. He approaches her and offers to help.
And the reality of his presence crashes down on him.
She looks terrified. She flat out rejects his help and hurries away.
Yeah.
And Moku-Gweyuu is just left standing there in the dark, lamenting to himself, wondering how on earth he can manage to look like a trustworthy older man.
It's a harsh collision between his internal self-image and his external reality.
How so?
Internally, he feels a kinship. He just conquered the stairs. He is back in his homeland. He feels like a friendly neighbor.
Right.
But he has forgotten how he is perceived in this high-context, cautious environment. To this local woman on a dark, quiet street, he is not a helpful citizen.
He's a large, unfamiliar man emerging from the shadows of the highway.
Exactly. His amber-preserved memory of community trust clashes violently with modern urban caution.
He feels at home, but the home perceives him as a threat.
That has to sting.
It definitely has to sting. But there's no time to dwell on it because they need to find a taxi.
Right.
And because they are in this quiet, rural area, they naturally gravitate toward the glowing beacon of modern Japanese infrastructure.
Ah, the 7-Eleven.
The local 7-Eleven, the true crucible of Japanese society.
It really is.
And this brings us to what is undoubtedly the most brilliant conceptual insight in the entire blog post.
Yes, I love this part.
Moku-Gweyuu walks through the sliding doors of this 2023 era 7-Eleven, and he is instantly totally overwhelmed by the shelves.
Just completely overloaded.
He coins a term for what he experiences, and it is absolute genius. He calls it the synaptic Urashima-Taro phenomenon.
I could honestly write an entire dissertation on that one phrase. Synaptic Urashima-Taro.
For you listening who might not know the folklore, Urashima-Taro is this classic Japanese story.
Right, about a fisherman.
Yeah, a fisherman who rescues a turtle, gets invited to a magical underwater palace, and spends what feels like a few days partying there.
But when he returns to his village on the surface, he realizes centuries have passed.
Exactly. He opens a forbidden box he was given and instantly ages into a withered old man.
So Moku-Gweyuu is casting himself as the time-traveling fisherman, returning to a world that left him behind.
But the addition of the word synaptic is where the hard science of memory comes in, isn't it?
It really is. He isn't just saying, like, I feel out of place.
Right. He is specifically talking about how his brain is malfunctioning. Can you explain the neurology of what he's experiencing in that snack aisle?
Well, the human brain is essentially a prediction engine.
Okay.
When it comes to food, we don't actually process every sensory detail from scratch every time we eat.
That would take too much energy.
Exactly. Over decades, your brain builds incredibly complex neural pathways, synapses that link visual inputs to gustatory or taste memories.
So when you look at a specific brand of potato chip or a familiar bakery item,
your brain instantly fires those synapses. It predicts the crunch, the salt level, the exact texture before you even touch the bag. It's an automatic, unconscious process.
But Japanese convenience stores are famous for hyper-rapid product turnover.
The packaging, the flavors, the seasonal limited editions, you changes weekly.
So Moku-Gweyuu, who has been absent for 16 years, walks into this store. His visual cortex takes in the packaging of a rice ball or a piece of bread.
And his brain searches its database for the corresponding 2001 memory file to predict the taste.
But the visual inputs of 2023 no longer map to the gustatory memory banks of 2001.
The synapses misfire. The brain generates a massive prediction error.
It's basically giving him a 404 error code, file not found.
Yes. It's not merely culture shock. It is a literal neurological disconnect.
Wow.
His brain cannot parse the environment because its predictive models are entirely obsolete. The sensory overload isn't just because there are new things. It's because his fundamental mechanism for categorizing the world is broken.
And watching him try to cope with this broken mechanism leads to this incredibly funny, deeply relatable dynamic with his wife.
Oh, the dynamic is hilarious.
He notes that his wife, who loves Japanese bakery items, is practically losing her mind. She is grabbing everything, ready to buy out the entire bread section of the 7-Eleven.
And Moku-Gweyuu has to step in.
He writes that he acts like a nagging mother, forcing her to put things back, telling her they only need the basics.
He's trying to reassert control over a chaotic environment.
He is. He's playing the grounded, rational patriarch again, but literally 5 seconds after scolding his wife and losing her cool over the bread,
he makes a massive, humiliating mistake of his own.
The coffee incident.
The coffee. It's so good.
He has seen on social media that 7-Eleven coffee in Japan is fantastic now. So he goes to the counter to order.
But his brain defaults to its American programming.
Right. He orders a small, because in the U.S., a small coffee is still a substantial beverage.
A decent amount of coffee.
Yeah. But the Japanese clerk hands him, he looks at it, and he hilariously describes it in the blog as looking like a microscopic urine test cup.
That visual is just too funny.
He realizes with horror that a Japanese large is basically an American small.
It perfectly encapsulates the dual nature of their coping mechanisms, don't you think?
How so?
Well, they are both entirely overwhelmed by the synaptic Urashima-Taro effect, but they're reacting in opposite ways.
Right. She regresses into a state of pure, uninhibited consumption. She wants to eat everything she missed.
And he tries to exert rigid, authoritative control, but fails completely because his baseline metrics for reality are broken.
He's trying to play the wise old man, but he's holding a thimble of coffee.
Exactly.
And the technological friction of this moment gets even better right outside the store. Because they came to the 7-Eleven to call a local taxi company.
Right.
Now it's 2023. They are carrying a state-of-the-art pocket Wi-Fi router. They have high-speed global internet access right in their pockets.
But internet access does not equal local infrastructure access.
Exactly. Because they only have a data router and no local Japanese cellular voice plans, they cannot actually dial the local analog phone number for the rural cab company.
Their iPhones are essentially bricks when it comes to hailing a ride.
So, surrounded by all this modern convenience, what does Moku-Gweyuu have to do?
He has to find a public payphone.
He walks out to the payphone in front of the 7-Eleven, and the detail he includes here is so telling.
What is the detail?
He specifically notes that he uses 7 physical 10-yen coins, the exact change he got from buying his tiny coffee to feed the machine and make the call.
Wow. It is such a stark contrast. The friction of the journey distilled into a single action.
Right.
He has a macro-level understanding of global supply chains and high-speed internet. But to actually move his body through his homeland, he needs the physical weight of 70 yen in copper coins.
It forces the narrative completely out of the digital ether and grounds it in tactile, analog reality.
And that physical, heavy reality really crashes down in the final section of this day's journey.
It really does. With the tiny coffee consumed and the taxi finally secured using the payphone, this epic 20-plus hour journey, all the flights, the bus, the dark stairs, the neurological short circuits, it all funnels down to its absolute narrowest point.
A hotel room.
A hotel room.
The anticlimax of arrival.
The taxi arrives quickly, and Moku-Gweyuu makes a point to note that the driver is excellent, polite, professional, smooth.
And Moku-Gweyuu makes an incredibly vulnerable admission here in the blog.
He does. He says that this good driver was a massive relief, because if he had gotten a bad, rude Showa-era driver, he might have unleashed his snapping habit.
He uses the term kirige, which is kind of the art of losing your temper.
Yeah, he admits he was on the verge of snapping. He says he was so close to the edge that he could have easily ended up dealing with the police on his very first night if the driver had just pushed the wrong button.
This requires us to look at the neuroscience of fatigue. What he's describing is a severe compromise of the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that stops us from screaming at strangers.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive function, impulse control, and emotional regulation.
Okay.
But it is an incredibly energy-hungry part of the brain. When you subject a 60-year-old body to 20 hours of travel, sleep deprivation, the stress of navigating a changed environment, and the cortisol spikes of hauling luggage upstairs,
it just shuts down.
The brain physically starves the prefrontal cortex to conserve energy for basic survival functions.
So his willpower battery is literally at 0%.
He has no emotional shock absorbers left. Moku-Gweyuu is highly intelligent. He knows his intellectual geopolitical musings are currently housed in a body that is running on fumes and airplane sausage.
That's a great way to put it.
The profound relief he feels isn't just about a smooth ride. It's the relief of a man who knows his biological capacity for patience is gone.
The taxi driver's professionalism essentially saved Moku-Gweyuu from his own biology.
Exactly.
So they drive through the town, and he notes that the streets are eerily deserted, even though it's barely 8 p.m. They finally get to their hotel. And the grand culmination of this 16-year wait comes down to a dispute over luggage.
The shifting of priorities is fascinating here.
They get into their twin room, and there is only one luggage rack provided. One small rack for 2 people who just hauled massive suitcases across the Pacific.
Now think about the Moku-Gweyuu from the beginning of the blog.
The guy who is raging about trash-tier elites ruining the world.
You'd think he would throw a fit about the hotel's lack of amenities.
But faced with the missing luggage rack, he just accepts it. He writes that he has absolutely no complaints, and he's just deeply grateful the 9-day stay was cheap.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs has completely flattened his ego.
And it gets even more raw and unfiltered from there. His wife, the moment they get in the room, immediately sits down and starts working on her electronic devices.
She doesn't even take a shower.
No, she just plugs straight back into the digital matrix to avoid dealing with the physical reality.
And Moku-Gweyuu?
Moku-Gweyuu goes down to the izakaya on the first floor, gets some takeout food, and eats it in the room. And then he explicitly documents a bodily function in the blog.
He writes about using the toilet.
He specifically mentions having a bowel movement. He puts it right there in the text.
Wow.
And by the time he finishes in the bathroom and comes out, his wife is fast asleep on her bed, still fully dressed in her travel clothes.
Just completely out.
Moku-Gweyuu looks at her, collapses onto his own bed by the window, and immediately loses consciousness. That's how the entry ends.
We started this analysis with Moku-Gweyuu acting like a geopolitical pundit, observing the burning world from 30,000 feet. But travel, aging, and fatigue strip away all that pretension.
You can sit on a bus worrying about shifts in global hegemony all day long, but at 9 p.m. after a 24-hour transit, the body takes over.
You don't care about McKinsey consultants anymore.
You just need a toilet, a single luggage rack, and a mattress. All the abstract anger simply evaporates into biological necessity.
And the inclusion of the bodily function is crucial here, you know.
Why do you think he included it?
Well, in the context of his attempt to write in the style of Kamasaka's historical diary, mentioning a bowel movement isn't just crass humor.
Right.
It is a deliberate grounding anchor to the physical self. It is a literary way of saying, I am not just a mind floating through the ether of global politics. I am a decaying, exhausted organism that must eat, excrete, and sleep.
It brings the lofty narrative to a startlingly human halt.
It does.
But here's where we have to zoom out one last time. Because that halting of the narrative doesn't just happen within the story of that night in the hotel.
Oh, right.
It is happening to the blog itself. And to truly grasp the weight of Moku-Gweyuu's journey, we have to look at this blog as a living, or rather a stalling entity.
This is the meta context.
Exactly. This is where the premise data we established at the beginning becomes the key to unlocking the whole piece.
Right, the premise data.
Remember, this series is called Town We'll Live In Someday, and currently the published blog only goes up to part 4.
The kanji he uses for part 4 is read as yon, by the way, not she.
Good point, Yon. But after part 4, the updates mysteriously stop. The story just freezes in time.
The narrative of finding the final home is abandoned mid-sentence.
But the secret behind the scenes is incredible. We know from the premise data that part 5 is actually 72% written.
72%.
It is sitting in his drafts folder right now, 72% complete, just waiting.
The phantom chapter.
And we know exactly why it stopped. Moku-Gweyuu has stated that he strongly wants to resume writing. He wants to finish the story.
Well, he's paralyzed.
He is paralyzed by a combination of 2 specific things. What he calls daily trivialities, the endless minor chores of life, or hibi no yoshinashi goto.
And the second thing?
A weakened motivation due to aging, the sheer mental friction of getting older.
Wow.
He says he is trapped in this perpetual state of nandakana, which is this Japanese sigh of resignation. It translates roughly to, oh well, or what can you do?
Nandakana. It's the sound of gravity winning.
That's beautifully put.
What is so powerful here is the direct thematic parallel between the hiatus of the blog and the physical journey he undertook. The life cycle of this blog series perfectly mimics the reality of the recount phase of life.
Walk me through that parallel. How does a drafted blog post equal aging?
Look at the trajectory of the trip we just analyzed. It starts with a massive initial burst of energy and intention.
Right.
He plans the transatlantic flight. He analyzes global politics with fiery passion. He literally sprints up a dark staircase carrying 2 heavy suitcases. The intent is fierce.
Yeah.
That initial burst of life force, that is the 72% of the blog that gets written.
But you can't sustain a sprint forever.
Exactly. Then the hotel room hits, the wife falls asleep in her clothes, the fatigue sets in, the inescapable heavy gravity of daily trivialities and biological decline takes over.
So the blog post stops.
The 72% drafted post sitting in the cloud is the perfect unintended metaphor for the very concept of the final home they traveled to establish.
Oh, wow. I see it now.
You can plan 72% of your retirement. You can pack the boxes, book the flights, draw up the blueprints, and sort through the dead relatives' belongings.
You can get almost all the way there.
But that last 28%,
Yeah.
the actual execution, the daily maintenance, the final settling in to the reality of the end of your life,
Yeah.
that requires an energy that is incredibly hard to summon when you are battling the weakened motivation of age.
It is so beautifully, tragically ironic. He went back to Japan after 16 years to organize a house to live in someday.
And the blog post documenting that exact journey is sitting in a drafts folder, also waiting to be finished someday.
And if we look at it through that lens, I would argue that leaving the post at 72% completion makes it a far more honest reflection of his stage in life than a perfectly polished, finished narrative ever could be.
You're right. A neatly tied up conclusion would be artificial. The Nandakana, that weary sigh of incomplete tasks and diminishing stamina, is the truest expression of what it means to be approaching Kanreki.
Life rarely offers us clean cinematic endings. It mostly just offers us a series of pauses dictated by our own exhaustion.
It is a masterful, if completely accidental, documentation of temporal displacement and the heavy gravity of time.
It really is. I mean, it takes a remarkable amount of courage to document your own decline with that level of self-awareness.
To go from raging at the global elite to admitting you were defeated by a tiny coffee cup and a missing luggage rack.
It strips away the myth of the perfectly planned life and leaves us with the raw humanity of just trying to get through the day.
It really does.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to ponder, drawing on Moku-Gweyuu's experience. Think about the place you consider home or the place you plan to eventually return to.
Right.
If you were separated from that place for 16 years, if your memory of it was frozen in amber while the world spun forward, what would your own synaptic Urashima Taro moment be?
What specific thing would break your predictive coding?
Exactly. What ordinary, everyday thing, what smell, what taste, or what mundane product on a convenience store shelf would completely short-circuit your brain because it evolved and moved forward in time while your memory of it stood completely still?
That is the true hidden cost of leaving home. You can always buy a ticket back, but you can never return to the time you left.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
If you enjoyed this, smash the like button, give this video some hype to help it reach more people, and hit subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.